A little girl mourning her mother discovers 3 hidden children crying for help beneath burning floorboards. The CEO father she calls arrives within minutes to save them, unaware these are his own sons, kept secret by his late wife who feared his indifference. As smoke fills the air and tiny voices plead for cake, a wealthy man's world shatters when he realizes the family he never knew existed was hidden just steps from his mansion. The humble caretaker holds the answers to why a mother would hide her children from their own father. What he finds will force him to choose between the empire he built and the sons he never held. Before we begin this story of justice and redemption, type love in the comments and tell us which country you're watching from. 7-year-old Madison pressed her tear-stained cheek against the cracked window of the wooden cottage, her pink hoodie damp from crying. The house stood barely 50 yards behind the sprawling mansion where she lived with her father, yet it felt like a different world. Her mother had loved this place. Now her mother was gone. 3 days. That was all the time that had passed since the funeral. 3 days since Madison watched them lower the white casket into the ground, while her father stood rigid in his dark suit, his face unreadable. 3 days since she lost the only person who truly understood her. The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the simple wooden floor. Madison had come here to be alone, to cry without the maids hovering, or her father's assistant checking on her every 10 minutes. This cottage was her secret refuge, the place where her mother used to retreat when she needed peace. The air smelled different today. Not the usual scent of old wood and dried flowers, but something acrid, something wrong. Madison wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie and stood up. A thin wisp of smoke curled up from between the floorboards near the corner of the room. She froze, her heart suddenly pounding. Then she heard it. A voice, small and frightened. "Mama? Is that you?" Madison's breath caught in her throat. She took a cautious step toward the sound, her sneakers creaking on the old floor. The smoke was getting thicker now, and she could see orange light flickering between the boards. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mama." Another voice joined the first, younger, more desperate. "Mama, you came back." Madison dropped to her knees, ignoring the growing heat beneath her. She grabbed the edge of a loose floorboard and pulled. It came up easily, revealing a trapdoor she had never known existed. Smoke billowed out, making her cough and stumble backward. Through the haze, she saw stairs leading down into darkness, and at the bottom 3 small faces looked up at her, illuminated by the growing flames behind them. 3 little boys. Identical, perhaps 4 years old. They wore different colored hoodies, blue, red, and green. Their faces were smudged with soot, their eyes wide with terror and hope. "Mama," the one in the blue hoodie asked again, his voice breaking. "Did you bring cake today?" Madison's mind reeled. These children thought her mother was their mother. These children were here, beneath this cottage, all along. These children were burning. "I'm not your mama," Madison said, her voice high with panic. "But I'm going to get you out." She reached down the stairs, but the smoke was too thick, the heat too intense. The boys were crying now, all 3 of them, their identical faces twisted in fear. The one in the red hoodie was coughing violently. Madison scrambled back, her hands shaking as she pulled her phone from her pocket. She had her father on speed dial. He was always too busy for her calls, always in meetings, always with clients. But this time she didn't care. The phone rang once. Twice. "Madison, I'm in the middle of— Daddy!" she screamed, her voice raw with terror. "There are children in Mama's cottage and it's on fire and they're trapped and I can't get them out." There was a split second of silence. Then her father's voice changed completely, became sharp and commanding. "Get out of the house, now! I'm coming!" The line went dead. Madison looked back at the opening in the floor. The flames were climbing the stairs now, and the boys had backed against the far wall of whatever room was beneath. She could barely see them through the smoke. "He's coming," she shouted down to them. "My daddy's coming to save you." The one in the green hoodie, the smallest, asked in a tiny voice, "Is he nice?" Madison's throat tightened. Her father was many things: a CEO, a businessman, a man who built empires and commanded boardrooms. But nice? "He'll save you," she said instead. "I promise." She could hear sirens in the distance now, growing louder. But before they arrived, she heard the roar of an engine much closer. Tires screeched on gravel. A car door slammed. Then her father was there, bursting through the cottage door with a force that shook the walls. He was still in his suit from whatever meeting she had interrupted, his tie already loosened as if he had been tearing at it on the drive over. Benjamin Hayes was 42 years old and looked every inch the successful CEO he was. Tall, with dark brown hair beginning to gray at the temples and a neatly trimmed beard. His blue eyes were usually cold and calculating. Right now they were blazing with something Madison had rarely seen: pure, undiluted fear. "Where?" he barked. Madison pointed to the opening in the floor. Her father took one look at the smoke and flames and immediately shrugged off his jacket. He soaked it in the water from an old vase on the windowsill, wrapped it around his head and shoulders, and plunged down the stairs without hesitation. Madison heard him coughing, heard the boys screaming, heard wood cracking and groaning. Then he emerged from the smoke like something from a nightmare, his suit ruined, his face black with soot. In his arms he carried two of the boys. He thrust them toward Madison. "Get them out, now." She grabbed the two children, one in blue and one in red, and stumbled toward the door just as firefighters rushed in. Her father had already disappeared back down the stairs. Outside on the grass, Madison set the boys down and looked at them properly for the first time. They were coughing and crying, clutching each other. They looked exactly alike except for their hoodies. "Where's our brother?" the one in blue asked, his voice shaking. "Where's the green one?" Madison looked back at the cottage. More firefighters were running in now, and she could hear her father's voice shouting something she couldn't make out. Then he appeared again, carrying the third boy. A paramedic immediately took the child and rushed him toward an ambulance. Her father stood there in the doorway, swaying slightly, his expensive suit destroyed, his face a mask of soot and sweat. Their eyes met across the lawn. Madison saw something in his expression she had never seen before. Not anger, not coldness, but absolute devastating shock. Because now that the boys were in the light, now that the danger was past and they could all see clearly, the truth was undeniable. The three little boys had Benjamin Hayes's dark hair, his strong jaw, his distinctive nose. They looked exactly like the photographs of Benjamin as a child that hung in the mansion's hallway. These weren't random children hiding in a cottage, these were his sons. And his wife, Madison's mother, had hidden them there all along. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Benjamin stood at the window, his ruined suit jacket draped over a chair, his white shirt still streaked with soot. He had been standing there for 20 minutes, not moving, not speaking, just staring out at the parking lot below. Madison sat in the corner with the three boys. They were clean now, dressed in hospital gowns that were far too big for them. The nurses had given them apple juice and crackers and they had stopped crying. Now they just looked confused. "Is he really our daddy?" The one in the blue hoodie whispered to Madison. His name was Christopher, according to the hospital bracelet on his wrist. The one in red was Matthew, and the one in green was Nathan. Madison didn't know what to say. She looked at her father's rigid back and wondered the same thing. A doctor had examined all three boys. Minor smoke inhalation, a few scrapes and bruises. Nothing serious. They were incredibly lucky, but luck didn't explain how they got there, or why. Mr. Hayes, a social worker, appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "We need to discuss the children's situation." Benjamin didn't turn around. "They're coming home with me." "Sir, with all respect, we don't have confirmation that you're their legal guardian. Their mother is deceased, but we need to verify." "DNA test." Benjamin's voice was flat, emotionless. "Do it now. You'll find they're mine." The social worker shifted uncomfortably. "Even so, we need to understand their living situation. They were found in what appears to be a hidden room beneath a cottage on your property. The fire marshal is investigating the cause of the blaze, but the conditions they were living in were not my doing." Benjamin finally turned around, and Madison saw that his eyes were bloodshot. Whether from smoke or emotion, she couldn't tell. "I didn't know they existed until an hour ago." The social worker's expression softened slightly. You didn't know your wife was pregnant with triplets? I didn't know she was pregnant at all. The words hung in the air like stones. Madison watched the three boys. They were playing with the hospital bed controls now, making it go up and down, giggling despite everything. They seemed remarkably resilient, or perhaps they simply didn't understand what was happening. How is that possible? The social worker asked quietly. Benjamin's jaw tightened. My wife and I were separated for the last 5 years of our marriage. We lived in the same house but led separate lives. She had her wing, I had mine. We attended social functions together to maintain appearances. That was all. But you never divorced. No. He looked away. She never asked for one, neither did I. It was easier to maintain the facade. Madison felt something twist in her chest. She had always known her parents' marriage was cold, but hearing it stated so bluntly, in front of strangers, made it real in a way it had never been before. So you're saying your wife was pregnant and you never noticed, the social worker said. Not unkindly, but clearly skeptical. I barely saw her. Weeks would go by where we didn't speak, except through staff. Benjamin ran a hand through his hair, leaving it standing up in ways that would have horrified his usual perfectly groomed appearance. She must have hidden it, worn different clothes, avoided me even more than usual. And then after they were born, she kept them in that cottage. For 4 years. Apparently. The social worker made notes on her clipboard. We'll need to investigate this thoroughly. Child Protective Services will be involved. But for tonight, if the DNA test confirms your paternity and you're willing to accept temporary custody, the boys can go home with you. Benjamin nodded once, sharp and decisive. Do the test. The social worker left. Benjamin looked at Madison for the first time since they arrived at the hospital. Did your mother ever say anything to you about this? Madison shook her head. I didn't even know the cottage had a basement. Neither did I. He looked at the boys, who were now building a tower out of juice boxes. She never told me. Never gave me the chance to... He stopped, his throat working. To what, Daddy? To be their father. The words came out raw, almost broken. Madison had never heard her father sound like that. Benjamin Hayes didn't break. He was granite. He was steel. He closed business deals worth billions without flinching. He fired executives without a second thought. He built an empire from nothing and ruled it with absolute control, but right now he looked lost. A nurse came in with the DNA testing kit. She swabbed Benjamin's cheek, then approached the boys. Can I have a little sample from your mouth? She asked cheerfully. It won't hurt, I promise. Christopher, the one in blue, looked at Benjamin. Is he really our daddy? The nurse glanced at Benjamin, uncertain how to answer. Benjamin walked over slowly and knelt down so he was at eye level with the boys. Madison held her breath. I think I am, he said quietly. Would that be okay? Matthew, in red, tilted his head. Do you have a big house? Despite everything, Benjamin's mouth twitched slightly. Yes. Bigger than the basement? Much bigger. Can we have our own beds? Benjamin's expression cracked. Just for a second, Madison saw something like anguish flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual control. You can have anything you want, he said. Nathan, the smallest in green, reached out and touched Benjamin's soot-stained shirt. You got dirty saving us. I did. Are you mad? No. Benjamin's voice was rough. I'm not mad. Mama always got mad when we got dirty. Madison saw her father's hands clench. Did she come see you often? The boys looked at each other. Christopher answered. Every day. She brought us food and books and toys. She said we had to stay in the basement because it was a secret. She said we couldn't tell anyone about us because people wouldn't understand. Did she say why? She said you were too busy, Matthew offered. She said you had important work and we would just be in the way. Benjamin stood up abruptly and walked back to the window. Madison could see his shoulders shaking slightly, though whether with rage or grief, she couldn't tell. The nurse finished the DNA tests and left, promising results within hours. Madison went to the boys and helped them finish building their juice box tower. They were sweet children, she realized, polite and gentle despite their circumstances. Her mother must have cared for them well, in her own way. But why hide them? Why tell them their father wouldn't want them? Why keep them locked away in a basement for 4 years? The door opened again and a woman entered. She was in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun and wearing a plain dress that had seen better days. Her face was lined with worry. "Mr. Hayes?" she said tentatively. Benjamin turned and Madison saw recognition flash across his face. "You're Clara. You worked for my wife." "Yes, sir." The woman twisted her hands together. "I'm the one who's been taking care of the boys. I heard about the fire. I came as soon as I could." "You knew about them." It wasn't a question. Clara nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Mrs. Hayes asked me to help her. She said it was the only way to keep them safe." "Safe from what?" "From losing you." Clara's voice broke. "She said you were too important, too busy with your company. She said if she told you about the boys, you would see them as a burden, an inconvenience. She said you might leave her, and she couldn't bear that." Benjamin stared at her. "So instead of telling me I had 3 sons, she hid them in a basement and told them I didn't want them?" "She was sick, Mr. Hayes." Clara wiped her eyes. "The cancer, it affected her mind. She wasn't thinking clearly those last few months. I tried to tell her to come to you, to tell you the truth, but she refused. She made me promise to keep caring for them after she was gone." "You were going to keep them there, even after she died?" "I didn't know what else to do." Clara looked at the boys, her face crumpling. "They're such good children. They deserved better than that basement. But Mrs. Hayes was so insistent, she said it was the only way. And I was afraid if I told you, you would think I was part of it, that you would blame me." Madison saw her father's hands shake. He turned back to the window, his voice tight. "Everyone get out." Clara hesitated. "Mr. Hayes." "Get out!" The words came out like a roar. Clara fled. The boys flinched. Madison stood up. "Daddy, take them to the cafeteria. Buy them whatever they want, just go." Madison had never heard that tone from her father before. She gathered the boys quickly, holding their hands as she led them out of the room. As the door closed behind them, she heard a sound that made her stop in her tracks. Her father was crying. Benjamin Hayes, the man who never showed weakness, the CEO who built an empire through sheer will and cold calculation, was sobbing. Madison quickly ushered the boys down the hall, her own eyes burning with tears. The triplets were chattering about what they wanted to eat, blissfully unaware of the devastation they had left behind. But Madison understood. Her mother had lied, had hidden 3 innocent children from their father, had let him believe for 4 years that he had only 1 child when he had 4. And now her father had to live with the knowledge that he had missed everything. First steps, first words, birthdays, 4 years of his sons' lives, stolen by a woman's fear and sickness. Madison looked down at the 3 little boys holding her hands, their faces so like her father's, and wondered how any of them would ever heal from this. The DNA results came back at midnight. Benjamin sat in the hospital's small consultation room, staring at the paper that confirmed what everyone already knew. Christopher, Matthew, and Nathan Hayes were his biological sons. He had 3 more children, 3 little boys who thought he didn't want them. 3 sons who had lived 50 yards from his house for 4 years while he worked and traveled and built his empire, completely unaware they existed. The social worker, now joined by a detective, sat across from him. The fire marshal had determined the cause of the blaze, faulty wiring in the hidden basement room. An accident, not arson, but the investigation into the boys' living conditions was just beginning. "We need to understand the full situation," the detective said. Her name was Olivia Parker, and she had kind eyes that had seen too much. "Your wife kept 3 children hidden in a basement for 4 years. That's child endangerment at minimum. My wife is dead." Benjamin's voice was hoarse from smoke and crying and exhaustion. "You can't prosecute her." "No, but we need to ensure those children are safe now." and we need to understand why this happened." Benjamin handed her his phone. On it was a video file that Clara had given him before leaving the hospital. "Watch this." Detective Parker pressed play. On the screen, a woman appeared. Madison's mother, Benjamin's late wife. She was thin, her skin pale, clearly sick. The video had been recorded perhaps a month before her death. "Benjamin," the woman on the screen said, her voice weak. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you've found our sons." Benjamin looked away. He had watched this video 3 times already. Each time felt like a knife twisting in his chest. "I know you'll be angry. You have every right to be. But please, try to understand." The woman on the screen wiped tears from her eyes. "When I found out I was pregnant with triplets, you and I were already falling apart. You were always at the office, always traveling, always choosing the company over me, over Madison. I convinced myself you wouldn't want more children, that you would see them as a burden." The social worker leaned in, watching intently. "And I was scared." The woman's voice cracked. "Scared that if I told you, you would leave me completely. At least with Madison we had some connection. But 3 more children? I thought it would be the end of us, so I hid them. I know it was wrong. I know it was cruel to them and to you. But I was terrified." On the screen, the woman dissolved into tears. "The cancer diagnosis changed everything. I realized what I had done. I realized I had kept you from your sons for years. I wanted to tell you. I tried so many times, but I was a coward. I was dying and I was a coward, and I let those boys live in a basement because I was too afraid to face what I had done." Benjamin's jaw clenched. "I've arranged for Clara to care for them after I'm gone. She's a good woman. She'll keep them safe until you're ready to know about them. I don't know how you'll find out. Maybe Madison will discover them. Maybe Clara will finally be brave enough to tell you. But when you do, please don't be angry with the boys. They're innocent in all this. They're wonderful children, Benjamin. They're smart and kind, and they deserve so much better than what I've given them." The woman on the screen looked directly at the camera. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stole 4 years from you. I stole their father from them. I let my fear and my sickness make me into a monster. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you'll give them the love I was too broken to give properly. Be the father to them that you never got to be when I was keeping you away." The video ended. Detective Parker sat back. "Well, that's something." "It's a confession," the social worker said quietly, "and an explanation. Not a good one, but an explanation." Benjamin took the phone back. "What happens now?" "The boys go home with you, assuming you want them. Child Services will monitor the situation for a while. You'll need to provide appropriate accommodations, education, medical care. There will be home visits, evaluations. You'll essentially be under scrutiny until we're satisfied the children are safe and thriving. I have a 10-bedroom mansion. I can hire the best nannies, tutors, whatever they need." "That's not what they need." Detective Parker's voice was gentle but firm. "They need a father. Can you be that?" Benjamin looked at her. For the first time in years, he didn't have an immediate, confident answer. Could he be a father? He had barely managed with Madison, leaving most of her care to nannies and tutors while he built his company. He loved his daughter, but he had never been particularly good at showing it. Work was what he knew, boardrooms and quarterly reports and hostile takeovers. Not bedtime stories and scraped knees and childhood fears. But the image of those 3 small faces looking up at him from the smoke kept flashing through his mind. The way Nathan had touched his dirty shirt, the way Christopher had asked if he was mad, the way Matthew had wanted to know if they could have their own beds, his sons, who had slept in a basement, who thought their father didn't want them. "I'll figure it out," he said finally. "I have to." Detective Parker studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good enough. For now." They gave him paperwork to sign, temporary custody arrangements, emergency guardianship forms. It was nearly 2 a.m. by the time everything was processed. Benjamin found Madison asleep in the cafeteria, her head on a table, the triplets curled up on chairs nearby. Someone had brought them blankets. They looked impossibly small. He stood there for a long time just watching them breathe. These were his children. All 4 of them. And he had failed 3 of them before he even knew they existed. "Daddy?" Madison's voice was sleepy. She lifted her head, blinking. "Is it time to go home?" "Yes." He gently shook the boys awake. They stirred, confused and disoriented. "Come on, let's go." Christopher rubbed his eyes. "Where are we going?" "Home. To the big house." The boys looked at each other, a mixture of excitement and fear on their faces. They had never been inside the mansion. They had only seen it from the cottage windows. Benjamin led them all out to his car. It was a sleek black sedan, expensive and immaculate. Or it had been before he drove it like a madman to save the boys. Now it smelled like smoke and fear. He buckled them into the back seat, Madison helping with the unfamiliar car seats that a nurse had donated. The boys were silent, wide-eyed, taking in everything. The drive to the mansion took 5 minutes. Benjamin pulled into the circular driveway and the boys pressed their faces to the windows. "It's huge," Matthew whispered. "Are you sure we can live here?" Nathan asked. Benjamin looked at them in the rearview mirror. "I'm sure." The front door opened before they reached it. Staff had been alerted. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Foster, stood there with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Hayes, we've prepared rooms for the boys. 4th floor, near Miss Madison's room. I hope that's appropriate." Benjamin nodded. He was too exhausted to think about room arrangements. Mrs. Foster led them inside. The boys stared at everything: the marble floors, the crystal chandelier, the sweeping staircase. It must have seemed like a palace after the basement. Madison took their hands again. "Come on, I'll show you your rooms." She led them up the stairs, chattering about where her room was and where the playroom was and where the kitchen was if they got hungry at night. The boys followed her like ducklings, their heads swiveling to take in every detail. Benjamin stood in the foyer, still in his ruined suit, watching his children disappear up the stairs. Mrs. Foster touched his arm gently. "Sir, you should rest." "I can't." He turned to her. "Get Claire on the phone. I want her here first thing in the morning. The boys know her. They'll need a familiar face." "Of course, sir." "And contact the best child psychologists in the state. All 4 of my children will need therapy, probably for years." "Yes, sir." "And find out what 4-year-old boys need. Toys, clothes, beds, everything. I want this house child-proofed and ready by tomorrow night. Mrs. Foster smiled slightly. "We'll handle it, sir." Benjamin nodded and headed toward his study. Then he stopped. "Mrs. Foster?" "Yes, sir." "Did you know? About the boys?" The housekeeper's face crumpled. "No, sir, I swear I had no idea. If I had known those children were living like that while we were here in comfort, I would have said something." He believed her. His wife had been very good at keeping secrets. Benjamin finally made it to his study and closed the door. He looked at the bookshelves lined with business awards, the desk covered in contracts and financial reports, the window that overlooked the grounds, and there, barely visible in the darkness, the cottage, or what was left of it. The fire had gutted the structure before firefighters contained it, the place where his sons had lived for 4 years, hidden, secret, unwanted, except they were wanted. He just hadn't known to want them. Benjamin sat down at his desk and put his head in his hands. For the first time in 20 years, he didn't know what to do. He couldn't negotiate this, couldn't outmaneuver it, couldn't throw money at it and make it disappear. This required something he had forgotten how to do. This required him to be present, to be vulnerable, to be human. Upstairs, he heard laughter, Madison's voice, and then the triplets giggling. Something about pajamas being too big. His children, laughing, in his house. Benjamin stood up and walked to the window. Tomorrow he would figure out how to be a father to 3 little boys who barely knew him. Tomorrow he would start rebuilding what his wife's fear and sickness had destroyed. But tonight, he just listened to their laughter and tried to remember what it felt like to hope. The first week was chaos. Benjamin canceled every meeting, postponed every conference call, and delegated everything he could to his executive team. For the first time in his career, his company came second. His sons came first. The boys adapted to the mansion with surprising speed. They ran through the halls, explored every room, and marveled at having their own beds. Clara came every day to help with the transition, providing continuity and comfort when the boys felt overwhelmed. But not everything was easy. Nathan woke up screaming every night, convinced he was back in the basement and the house was on fire. Matthew refused to eat anything except the simple foods he was used to, gagging when presented with the elaborate meals the chef prepared. Christopher asked constantly when their mother was coming back, unable to fully grasp that she was gone forever. And Madison struggled too. She had been an only child for 7 years. Now suddenly she had 3 little brothers who needed constant attention, who invaded her space, who looked at her father with desperate hope that made her feel strangely jealous. Benjamin hired the best child psychologist in Chicago, Dr. Claire Morgan, who began seeing all 4 children twice a week. She sat with him after the first session, her expression serious. The boys have attachment issues, anxiety, and trauma from both the confinement and their mother's death. Madison has grief, confusion, and some resentment about losing her position as the only child. And you, Mr. Hayes, have guilt and no idea how to parent 4 children when you barely knew how to parent 1. Benjamin didn't argue. What do I do? You learn, you make mistakes, you keep showing up. That's all anyone can do. So he tried. He started having breakfast with all 4 children every morning, even though it meant pushing back his workday by 2 hours. He read bedtime stories to the triplets, even though they usually ended with Nathan crying and Christopher asking impossible questions about death and heaven. He took them shopping for clothes and toys, watching in bewilderment as Madison helped the boys pick out everything from the right size shoes to which superhero action figures were coolest. He learned that Christopher liked puzzles, Matthew loved animals, and Nathan was terrified of loud noises. He learned that Madison felt forgotten sometimes and needed reassurance that having brothers didn't mean he loved her less. And slowly, painfully, he learned how to be present instead of absent, how to put down his phone when one of the children was talking, how to actually listen instead of just waiting for the conversation to end so he could get back to work. But the outside world didn't stay away forever. 2 weeks after the fire, Benjamin's mother showed up. Victoria Hayes was 70 years old, impeccably dressed, and had opinions about everything. She had attended her daughter-in-law's funeral with appropriate solemnity, expressed condolences to Benjamin and Madison, and returned to her estate in Boston without much fuss. But now she had heard about the triplets. Benjamin found her in his study, having let herself in with the key he had never taken back. She sat in his chair, her face severe. 3 children hidden in a basement, and you knew nothing about it? Benjamin poured himself a drink. It was 10 in the morning, but he didn't care. That's correct. How is that possible, Benjamin? How do you not notice your wife is pregnant with triplets? We were separated. We barely spoke. She hid it deliberately. He drank, feeling the burn of expensive scotch. I've explained this to the police, to child services, and to everyone else who's asked. I don't feel like explaining it again. Victoria stood up, her expression softening slightly. I'm not accusing you. I'm trying to understand. These boys are my grandsons. I want to meet them. Benjamin hesitated. His mother was not warm. She had raised him with discipline and high expectations, and while he respected her, he had never felt particularly loved by her. She had done her duty as a parent, nothing more. They're fragile right now. They've been through trauma. All the more reason they need family. Bring them down. It wasn't a request. Benjamin found the boys in the playroom with Madison. They were building an elaborate block tower, working together with surprising cooperation. When they saw him, all 3 boys looked up with identical smiles. Something in his chest tightened. They were starting to look at him like that more often, like they were glad to see him, like they trusted him. He was terrified of breaking that trust. Boys, there's someone who wants to meet you. Your grandmother. The smiles faltered. We have a grandmother? Christopher asked. You do? She's downstairs. Come on. Madison shot him a worried look but stayed behind. This was between Benjamin and his mother. He led the triplets down to the study. Victoria stood by the window, her posture perfect. When she turned and saw the boys, her face went absolutely still. "They look just like you did," she whispered. "All three of them." Benjamin saw it too. The boys had his dark hair, his strong features, even his serious expression when they were uncertain. They looked like Hayes' children through and through. "Boys, this is your grandmother Victoria. Mother, these are Christopher, Matthew, and Nathan." Victoria approached slowly as if the boys might bolt. She knelt down, which Benjamin had never seen her do in his entire life. "Hello," she said formally. "I'm very pleased to meet you." The boys looked at each other. Then Nathan, the bravest when it came to people, stepped forward. "Are you nice?" Victoria blinked. "I hope so." "Do you have cookies?" Despite everything, Benjamin's mother smiled. Actually smiled. "I don't. But we could make some together if you like." Nathan's face lit up. "Really? Really?" Victoria stood up and offered her hand. "Shall we go to the kitchen?" To Benjamin's shock, all three boys took her hands and followed her out of the study. He trailed behind, watching as his severe, formal mother led three little boys to the kitchen and began asking the chef for ingredients. Within 20 minutes, the kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, chocolate chips scattered across the counter, three small boys covered in dough. Victoria had removed her designer jacket and rolled up the sleeves of her silk blouse. She was showing Nathan how to scoop dough onto the baking sheet. "Not too much, just a spoonful." "Yes, like that." "Very good." Matthew licked chocolate off his fingers. "You're nice." Victoria paused. "Thank you. Mama never let us cook. She said it was too messy." The temperature in the room dropped. Victoria looked at Benjamin, her eyes hard. Did she not? Benjamin just shook his head. There was so much his wife hadn't let the boys do, so much she had denied them in the name of keeping them secret and safe. Christopher tugged on Victoria's sleeve. "Can we make cookies again sometime?" "Anytime you like," Victoria said firmly. "In fact, I think I might stay in Chicago for a while. I could visit every week if your father doesn't mind." Benjamin found his voice. "I don't mind." "Good." Victoria returned her attention to the boys. "Now let's put these in the oven and you can tell me about yourselves while they bake." Benjamin left them there and went to find Madison. She was in her room, reading. "Your grandmother's making cookies with the boys," he said. Madison looked up in disbelief. "Grandmother? Our grandmother who thinks sugar is poison and hired help should do all the cooking. Apparently she's changed her priorities." Madison set down her book. "Everything's changing, isn't it?" Benjamin sat on the edge of her bed. "Yes. Do you think things will ever feel normal again?" He wanted to say yes, wanted to reassure her, but he was trying to be honest with his children now. "I don't know, but we'll figure it out together." Madison was quiet for a moment. "I miss Mom. Even though what she did was terrible, I still miss her." "Me too." The words surprised him, but they were true. He missed the woman he had married, before illness and fear had twisted her into someone capable of hiding 3 children. It's okay to miss her and be angry with her at the same time. Is that how you feel? Every day. Madison leaned against him and Benjamin put his arm around her. They sat like that until the smell of fresh cookies drifted upstairs and the sound of the triplets' laughter filled the house. Maybe normal was gone forever, but perhaps they could build something new. The second crisis came a week later. Benjamin was in a video conference with his executive team when Mrs. Foster knocked urgently on his study door. "Sir, there are reporters outside the gate." Benjamin's stomach dropped. He had been dreading this. "How many?" "At least a dozen. They're asking about the boys, about the fire. Someone leaked the story." Benjamin ended the conference call and looked out the window. Sure enough, news vans lined the street. Cameras pointed at the mansion. He called his lawyer immediately. "Get here now and prepare a statement." Within the hour, his lawyer and his publicist were in the study, both looking grim. "This is bad. the publicist said bluntly. CEO's wife hides triplets in basement for 4 years, then dies, leaving him to discover them in a fire. The press is going to have a field day. I don't care about the press, I care about my children. I don't want them harassed. Then we need to control the narrative. The publicist pulled out her tablet. We release a carefully worded statement. We express grief over your wife's death and her mental state in her final years. We emphasize that you're focused on your children's well-being. We ask for privacy during this difficult time. Benjamin nodded. Do it. But the statement didn't stop the media circus. If anything, it made it worse. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the secret triplets, about Benjamin's marriage, about what kind of man doesn't know his wife is pregnant. The boys saw the reporters when they looked out the window. They didn't understand what was happening, but they could sense the tension. Why are those people here? Christopher asked at dinner. They're curious about our family, Benjamin said carefully, but they're not allowed on our property. You're safe here. Are they bad people? No, they're just doing their jobs, but we don't have to talk to them. Madison picked at her food. People at school are asking me questions about the boys, about Mom. I don't know what to say. Benjamin's heart sank. He had hoped the school would keep things quiet, but of course they hadn't. Secrets involving CEOs and hidden children were too juicy to ignore. You don't have to say anything. Tell them it's private family business. They don't stop asking. Benjamin looked at his daughter's miserable face and made a decision. You don't have to go back, any of you. We'll hire tutors. You can study here until this dies down. Madison looked torn between relief and disappointment. She loved school, loved her friends, but the attention was clearly too much. Okay, she said quietly. The triplets, who had never been to school, just looked confused, but they were used to being confused lately. That night, after the children were in bed, Benjamin stood at his study window and watched the reporters camped outside his gate. His lawyer had gotten a restraining order to keep them off the property, but they weren't leaving. This was his life now. Public scrutiny, constant questions. His children treated like a scandal instead of human beings who had suffered enough. He thought about his wife's video confession, about how she had feared he would see the boys as a burden. He wasn't burdened. He was furious that she had kept them from him. He was heartbroken at what they had endured. He was terrified he would fail them, but he wasn't burdened. They were his sons, and he would protect them from this circus, from the judgment, from everything, even if he had to burn his entire reputation to the ground to do it. 3 months after the fire, the media attention had mostly died down. The reporters had moved on to other scandals, leaving the Hayes family to rebuild in relative peace. But peace was a fragile thing. Benjamin had thrown himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he once applied to hostile takeovers. He attended every therapy session, every doctor's appointment, every milestone. He learned to braid Madison's hair, to soothe Nathan's nightmares, to explain complex questions from Christopher, to calm Matthew when animals weren't available for comfort. His company hadn't collapsed in his absence, but it had suffered. Deals had fallen through. Competitors had gained ground. His board of directors was getting restless. Benjamin didn't care. For the first time in his adult life, something mattered more than business. But then Clara came to him with a box. She had been cleaning out the cottage, salvaging what little had survived the fire. Most of it was destroyed, but in a fireproof safe hidden beneath the stairs she had found documents. You need to see these, she said, her face pale. Benjamin took the box to his study and opened it. Inside were medical records, legal documents, and letters. So many letters. He started reading. The medical record showed his wife's pregnancy with the triplets, confirmed 5 years ago. She had seen a private doctor, paid in cash, kept everything off her insurance. Deliberate and systematic deception. The legal documents were worse. His wife had written a will, separate from the one her lawyer had filed. In this version, she left everything to Clara with instructions to continue caring for the boys in secret until they were 18. She had planned to keep them hidden forever, but the letters were what broke him. They were addressed to him, written over the course of 4 years, never sent. His wife's confession, her justification, her deteriorating mental state all laid bare in ink. Dear Benjamin, the boys are 6 months old today. Christopher smiled at me. I wish I could tell you. I wish I could show you. But I'm so afraid you'll take them away. You'll put them in boarding school or hire nannies and I'll never see them. At least this way, they're mine. Dear Benjamin, the boys are walking now. All 3 of them toddle around the basement like little ducks. Clara says I should tell you. She says you have a right to know. But what if she's wrong? What if you don't want them? What if you divorce me and take everything, including Madison? I can't risk it. Dear Benjamin, Nathan asked me today why he can't go outside. I told him it's not safe, but the truth is I'm not safe. I'm not well. The cancer is back, and this time I don't think I'll survive. I need to tell you about the boys. I will tell you. Soon. I promise. I just need to find the right words. Dear Benjamin, I'm dying. The doctors give me 6 months. I've run out of time to find the right words. There are no right words for what I've done. I've kept your sons from you for 4 years. I've let them live in darkness because I was too broken to face the light. I'm a coward. I'm a monster. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I still can't tell you. Even now, facing death, I'm too afraid. Afraid you'll hate me. Afraid you'll take the boys and erase me from their memory. At least if they stay with Clara, they'll remember their mother who brought them cake and read them stories. They won't know what I really was. A sick, selfish woman who chose her own fear over her children's freedom. Benjamin read every letter. Years of his wife's spiral into paranoia and sickness, all documented in cramped handwriting that grew shakier as time went on. When he finished, he sat in his study and wept. Not for his wife. Not really. She had made her choices, however warped by illness. He wept for his sons. For the 4 years they spent underground. For the father they could have had if their mother had been brave enough to trust him. He wept for himself. For the man he had been, so consumed by work that his wife genuinely believed he would reject 3 innocent children. For the reputation he had built as cold and untouchable, so convincing that even his own wife thought him incapable of love. Had he been that man? Would he have rejected the triplets if she had told him? He wanted to say no. Wanted to believe he would have stepped up, been a father from the beginning, but honestly he didn't know. The man he was 5 years ago, consumed by ambition and success, might have seen triplets as an inconvenience, might have done exactly what his wife feared and shipped them off to be raised by professionals while he continued building his empire. The fire had forced him to change, forced him to confront what mattered. But if there had been no fire, would he have ever changed at all? The door to his study opened. Madison stood there, now 8 years old and far too perceptive. You're crying again. Benjamin wiped his face. I found letters from your mother. What did they say? He hesitated, then decided she deserved the truth. She was old enough. They said she was scared. She thought I wouldn't want the boys, that I was too focused on work to be a good father. Madison came closer. Were you? The question hit like a punch. Yes, I think I was. But you're not anymore. No, I'm trying not to be. Madison climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done in over a year. I think you're a good dad now. You mess up sometimes, like when you put Nathan's shirt on backwards and didn't notice until we got to therapy, or when you tried to make dinner and burned the chicken so bad the smoke alarm went off. Despite everything, Benjamin laughed. I did burn that chicken pretty badly. But you're here. That's what matters. You're here and you're trying, and the boys love you. We all love you. Benjamin held his daughter close, feeling the weight of her words. They loved him, despite his mistakes, despite his past, despite everything. I love you too, he said. All of you. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone. Even more than your company. Especially more than my company. Madison hugged him tighter. Good, because the boys are asking when you're coming to play blocks with them. They're building a tower taller than you, and they want you to see it before it falls. Benjamin set the letters aside. They were the past. His children were the present and hopefully the future. He let Madison lead him to the playroom, where the triplets had indeed built a tower of blocks that nearly reached the ceiling. They were so proud, all three of them talking over each other to explain how they did it. Benjamin sat on the floor with them and listened to every word. When the tower inevitably fell, bringing blocks cascading down around them, he laughed along with their shrieks and helped them start building again. This was his life now, not boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, but blocks and bedtime stories and being present for the small moments that made up childhood. He wouldn't trade it for anything. 1 month later, Child Services closed their investigation. The boys were thriving. They had gained weight, were sleeping better, and were showing remarkable progress in therapy. Madison had returned to school and was doing well. The family was healing. Benjamin was officially granted full custody of all 4 children with no restrictions. The case was closed. That night, he gathered all 4 children in the living room. He had something important to tell them. "I need to talk to you about something," he began. The triplets looked worried. They still associated serious conversations with bad news. "Am I in trouble?" Nathan asked. "No, no one's in trouble." Benjamin knelt down so he was at their level. "I wanted to tell you that you're mine now. Officially. The courts have said that I'm your father, and you're my sons, and nothing can change that. You're safe, you're loved, and you're staying here forever." Christopher's eyes filled with tears. "We can stay? Really? Really?" Matthew threw his arms around Benjamin's neck. "I don't want to live anywhere else. I want to stay here with you and Madison and Grandma Victoria when she visits." "Then you will." Nathan, the most traumatized, the one who still woke up screaming sometimes, looked at Benjamin with heartbreaking hope. "You're not going to get tired of us?" Benjamin felt his throat close. He pulled all 3 boys into his arms, holding them tight. "Never. I will never get tired of you. You're my sons. I love you. Nothing will ever change that." Madison joined the hug, wrapping her arms around all of them. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled together, a family rebuilt from ashes and secrets and love. Later, after the children were asleep, Benjamin stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom and looked at himself. The man staring back was different from the one who existed before the fire. His hair had more gray. His eyes had more warmth. His shoulders carried weight that had nothing to do with business. He was a father, not a perfect one, not even a particularly skilled one. But he was present. He was trying. And he was loved. That was enough. 1 year after the fire, the mansion's backyard had been transformed. What was once a sterile, perfectly manicured lawn was now filled with play equipment, a treehouse, and a small garden that Madison and the triplets tended together. The burned cottage had been demolished, and in its place stood a small memorial garden with 4 benches and a fountain. Benjamin had insisted on the memorial. The boys needed a place to remember their mother that wasn't associated with darkness and secrets. A place where they could process the complicated truth that she had loved them but also harmed them, that she had been sick and scared and deeply flawed. Therapy had taught them all that people could be contradictions, that you could love someone and still be angry with them. That forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Today was a celebration, the triplets' 5th birthday. Benjamin had invited everyone. His mother Victoria, who now visited twice a month and spoiled the boys shamelessly. Clara, who the boys still called Aunt Clara and who had become part of the family. Dr. Morgan, who had seen them through the worst and now came as a friend. And a few carefully selected children from the boys' new preschool. Madison, now 8 and impossibly mature, had helped plan everything. She had chosen the decorations, organized games, and even baked a cake with Victoria's help. The boys ran through the yard in their color-coded shirts. Christopher in blue, Matthew in red, Nathan in green. They were louder now, healthier, happier. They roughhoused with the other children, climbed the treehouse and shrieked with laughter when the sprinklers turned on. They looked like normal 5-year-olds, and that was the greatest gift Benjamin could have hoped for. "They've come so far." Dr. Morgan stood beside him, watching the chaos with a smile. A year ago, Nathan couldn't sleep through the night. Now look at him, leading the charge on the water slide. Benjamin smiled. He's the bravest of the three now. Funny how that works. Trauma can break people or forge them into something stronger. These boys are being forged. Thanks in large part to you. I'm just showing up. And that's more than many parents do. Dr. Morgan patted his arm. You should be proud. Benjamin was proud. Not of himself necessarily, but of his children. All four of them had survived something terrible and come out the other side still capable of joy. Victoria appeared at his elbow, immaculate as always, but with flour on her sleeve from cake preparation. The children are asking for you. Something about presents. Benjamin made his way to the patio, where a mountain of wrapped gifts waited. The boy's eyes were huge. Are those all for us? Matthew breathed. All for you. But there's one special gift I want to give you first. Benjamin pulled out 3 small boxes. These are for you to keep forever. The boys opened them carefully. Inside each box was a watch, expensive but sturdy, engraved with their names and a message. Always loved, always wanted, always mine. Dad. Christopher traced the words with his finger. What does it say? Benjamin knelt down. It says that you're loved, that you're wanted, and that you're mine. No matter what anyone ever told you before, no matter what you ever think, those 3 things will always be true. Nathan threw his arms around Benjamin's neck. I love you, Daddy. The word still hit him like a freight train every time. Daddy. They called him that now, all 3 of them. It had started tentatively months ago, and now it was natural. I love you too, all of you. The party continued with cake and games, and the beautiful chaos of children enjoying themselves. Benjamin found himself laughing more than he had in years, helping with the piñata, judging a race, rescuing a ball from the tree. As the sun began to set and guests started leaving, Clara approached him. She looked nervous. Mr. Hayes, I wanted to thank you for letting me stay in their lives. I know what their mother did was wrong and I was part of it. I felt so guilty. Benjamin had worked through his feelings about Clara in therapy. She had been in an impossible position, loyal to a dying woman who was clearly unwell. She had cared for the boys as best she could under terrible circumstances. You kept them safe, he said simply. You fed them and loved them and made sure they survived until I could find them. I'll always be grateful for that. Clara's eyes filled with tears. They're wonderful boys. They are. And you helped make them that way. After Clara left, Benjamin found Madison sitting on one of the memorial garden benches looking thoughtful. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her. I was thinking about Mom, wondering what she would think of all this. Madison gestured to the yard, still littered with birthday decorations and happy chaos. I think she'd be glad the boys are happy, even if she'd be heartbroken about how we got here. Do you think she loved us, really? Benjamin considered the question carefully. I think she loved you very much. I think she loved the boys too in her own way. But her sickness and her fear made her do terrible things. Love isn't always enough if you're too broken to express it properly. That's sad. It is. But we can honor her memory by doing better, by loving each other openly, by not letting fear make us cruel. Madison leaned against him. I'm glad the boys are here, even though it's been hard. I like having brothers. Even when they get into your stuff? Even then. Mostly. Benjamin laughed and hugged his daughter. She had grown up so much this year, forced into maturity by circumstances no child should face. But she had also found joy in her new role as big sister. As darkness fell, Benjamin gathered all 4 children on a blanket in the yard to watch fireflies. The triplets chased them briefly, then settled down between him and Madison, tired from the excitement. Daddy? Christopher asked. Can we have another birthday next year? You'll have a birthday every year for the rest of your life. Will you be there? Every single one, I promise. Nathan yawned. Will we always live here? In the big house? As long as you want to. This is your home. Matthew was already half asleep. I like home. Me too, Benjamin said softly. Me too. They stayed there until the boys were drowsy. Then Benjamin carried them inside one by one, Madison trailing behind. He tucked each boy into his own bed, in his own room, safe and warm and wanted. He kissed their foreheads and turned on their night lights, specially designed to project stars on the ceiling. Nathan had said once that he liked to imagine what the sky looked like since he'd spent so long underground. Now he could see stars every night. Madison kissed her brothers goodnight, then went to her own room. Benjamin tucked her in too, something he'd never done regularly before the fire, but now did every night. "Dad?" she said as he turned off the light. "Yeah? I think we're going to be okay, all of us." Benjamin smiled. "I think you're right. He went to his study and looked at the documents on his desk. Not contracts or financial reports, but drawings from the triplets, Madison's report card, therapy notes tracking their progress. His company was doing fine without his constant attention. He still worked, still attended important meetings, still made major decisions, but he had learned to delegate. Learned that the world didn't end if he left the office at 5 o'clock. Learned that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. On his desk was the last letter from his wife, the one he kept as a reminder, not of her betrayal, but of what fear could do, of what he never wanted to become. He also kept a photo from today's party, all 4 children laughing, covered in cake, holding each other, a family born from tragedy but built on love. Benjamin turned off the study light and went upstairs. He paused outside the triplets' rooms, listening to their quiet breathing. Then he checked on Madison, who was already asleep with a book on her chest. His children, all 4 of them, safe and loved and healing. It had taken a fire to bring them together. It had taken loss and pain and public scandal. It had taken confronting every failure and fear he'd spent his career avoiding. But they had made it. Against all odds, they had become a family, and that was worth more than any empire he could have built. Epilogue, 5 years later. 10-year-old Nathan burst through the front door, still wearing his soccer uniform covered in grass stains and grinning ear to ear. "Dad, we won. I scored the winning goal. I scored the B." Benjamin looked up from helping Matthew with homework and smiled. "That's fantastic. Tell me everything." As Nathan launched into an enthusiastic play-by-play, Christopher came in behind him, also in uniform but less excited. "He's exaggerating." It bounced off his knee by accident. "Did not. It was totally on purpose." "Was not. Boys." Benjamin used his dad voice, the one that had taken years to perfect. "It doesn't matter how the goal happened. You won as a team. That's what counts." Madison appeared from upstairs, now 13 and looking far too grown up. "Are they fighting about the game again?" "Yes," Matthew said without looking up from his math. "They've been fighting since we left the field." Some things never change. Madison grabbed a snack from the kitchen. "Dad, don't forget you're helping me with my science project tonight." "After dinner, promise." The door opened again and Victoria entered, not bothering to knock anymore. "I heard there was a soccer victory to celebrate. I brought ice cream." The boys cheered and abandoned their argument to hug their grandmother, who pretended to be scandalized by their dirty uniforms but hugged them anyway. This was Benjamin's life now, chaotic and loud and full of mundane problems like grass-stained uniforms and science projects and sibling squabbles. It was perfect. The company still ran. Benjamin still served as CEO, but with a different approach. He worked from home 2 days a week. He never missed a soccer game, a school play, or a parent-teacher conference. He had learned that you could be successful in business and still be present for your family. It just required being intentional about both. The boys were thriving. Christopher, still the most serious, was top of his class. Matthew volunteered at an animal shelter every weekend. Nathan played 3 sports and somehow maintained straight A's despite his busy schedule. Madison was applying to prestigious high schools and talking about becoming a doctor. She had turned the trauma of her early childhood into motivation to help others. They all still went to therapy, though less frequently now. Dr. Morgan said they were one of her greatest success stories, a family that had taken the worst circumstances and built something beautiful. Clara still visited weekly, now considered an honorary aunt. She had her own small cottage on the property, built where the old one had stood but filled with light and windows. Sometimes the boys still asked her about their mother, wanting to know the good memories, the moments of genuine love. Clara always told them the truth. Their mother had loved them but had been too sick to love them well. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, and it helped them understand that they could honor her memory while still acknowledging the harm she had caused. At dinner that night, gathered around the table with all 4 children and Victoria, Benjamin looked at his family and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not for the fire, not for the tragedy, but for the second chance it had given him. A chance to be the father he should have been all along. A chance to know his sons. A chance to build something that mattered more than any business deal ever could. "Dad, you're doing the staring thing again," Madison said with a smile. "Am I?" "Yeah. The thing where you look at all of us like you're trying to memorize our faces. Can you blame me? You're all growing up too fast." Nathan rolled his eyes. "You're getting sappy again." "I'm allowed to be sappy. I'm your father." "The sappiest father in Chicago," Christopher agreed. "In the whole country," Matthew added. "Fine. I'm sappy. I'm also grateful. For all of you." The children groaned good-naturedly, but Benjamin saw them smile. They knew. They understood what he was really saying, that they were his everything, that he would choose them every single time, that no matter what the past had held, the future was theirs to build together. After dinner, after homework and ice cream and the bedtime routines that had become sacred, Benjamin stood in the doorway of the triplets' rooms. They were 10 now, getting too old for tucking in, but they still let him say goodnight. "Love you guys," he said. "Love you too, Dad," they chorused, already half asleep. He checked on Madison, who was reading in bed. "All good?" he asked. "All good. Night, Dad." "Night, sweetheart." Benjamin went to his room and looked out the window at the memorial garden below. 4 benches for 4 children, a fountain that ran year-round, a place of peace where tragedy had once stood. His phone buzzed, a message from his executive assistant about a meeting tomorrow. He glanced at it, then set the phone aside. Tomorrow he would handle business. Tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be. In a house full of children who were safe and loved and wanted. In a family built from ashes and secrets, now stronger than anything he had ever constructed in a boardroom. This was his legacy. Not the company, not the wealth, not the reputation, but 4 children who knew they mattered, who knew they were loved, who would grow up and hopefully love their own children just as fiercely. Benjamin turned off the light and went to sleep, surrounded by the quiet sounds of his family. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he had no nightmares, only dreams of tomorrow. The end.